Welcome to today's session on Introduction to Client-Server Architecture. Today's presentation is the fifth presentation in the course on web-based technologies and multimedia applications. Today we will be discussing about one of the most important concepts, which is called client-server architecture. In today's presentation, we will be introducing you to this particular concept. As we move ahead in the remaining presentations, we will be dwelling into this particular concept in depth, and then you will be having understanding of how this entire system of internet works. So the objective of today's presentation is to introduce the client-server computing. World Wide Web is one of the most popular services of internet. In the past, a computer was used as a standalone device that was specifically used for certain purposes. However, the internet technologies have changed it all. But how did it all happen? Today we will focus on one of the basic concepts that actually led to the development of such a technology. This concept is the concept of client and server. When we hear about the client and server, let us just consider something which is really similar to the client and server architecture. Suppose we go to a restaurant. There, once we take our seat, a person comes and asks us for the menu, or he asks us for the order. So we will be placing some order. So he goes back and comes with that particular order. So you must be ordering some items which is serving you. So here, when you went, sat, and when you give the items for order, you are a client. And the person who is coming and taking the order, going inside and getting them, is the server. So here also the client server architecture works in the same manner. Here the computer requests for something, and then it gets what it requests, provided that is a valid request. So who gives it? It is another computer called the server. So basically, client and server are both computers. The computer that seeks information is known as client, and the computer that gives information is known as server. So as the name suggests, client server computing splits any application, including an internet based application, into tasks that are performed using three separate components. The client computer, which is also called the front end. It is called the front end because whenever you are making a request, that computer is in front of you, and that is the place where the information is loaded once it is received. The server computer is the second, which is also called the backend. And backend is normally not visible to you. Whenever you sit before the browser and enters a URL, so that is the front end, and again you get the information loaded there. From where you are getting that information, you do not know. Of course, you know the address, but at the same time you are not able to see that machine. So that is the backend. So you do not know where is that backend and how that backend looks, all those things, but the entire information is loaded onto the front end on the request of front end. It has to be a very powerful computer because many people will be requesting for information from the backend. The network that connects the two, such as a local area network or a wide area network that connects to the client to the server. So the server and the client, they can be connected through any means. It can be a LAN, it can be a wide area network, and in our sense, let us forget about the LAN and WAN. For us it is internet. So in internet, whenever you sit before the computer, opens the browser and you type some address and you get that information. So how the client and server are connected? It is through a network, and basically it is nothing but it is the internet, which we often call a global collection of the networks which are connected to each other. But why should we separate the server from a client and depend on the network to get the services of an application? The main reason is that by doing so, we are able to create an intelligent system of information, processing resources, services, applications, and other things. It can also reduce load on the processing power requirements of the client machine. Normally in the server machine, everything is stored, and client machine doesn't need to have much memory accept the speed of the processor, and client machine is dedicated to do some particular tasks based on the person who is using it. On the other end, there doesn't need to be any person who is sitting before the server as a person sitting before the client. The job of the server is to just serve. The job of the server is to listen to the requests of the client and fulfill those requests as long as those requests are the valid. So, since many people will be requesting for the information, the server capacity should be very high. For example, let me say that you want to read a newspaper. So, the address of the newspaper is, let me say, www.thehindu.com. I am speaking about the Hindu newspaper. So, many people in the morning, they might be requesting for this particular paper through their browser. So, this particular paper is loaded in the server, and that server receives requests from everybody, and as it receives the request, it will be providing a copy of that paper onto their front end through the network. So, to get the requests fulfilled, which are concurrent and many in number, the server needs to be powerful. Now, suppose you want a client and server to be in the same machine, then everything is there in the same machine. So, basically you are not connecting anywhere. So, whatever information you already have, that is loaded in the same machine, and there itself you are again requesting. That is also possible. So, whenever you want to experiment something, you can use the same machine as a client and a server, but that is for testing purposes and for experimental purposes. But in real life, there are many servers, there are many clients. Any client can seek information from any server, and any server can fulfill the request of any client as long as the request is valid. On the whole, the client-server computing technology empowers the users having finite processing power to access information and applications that may require substantial resources. In general, client-server architecture opens up issues like scalability, reliability, security, and other things. A client-server system is expected to be more reliable and secure, not because threats have reduced, but because such jobs can be specifically performed on server resources in a much more efficient way. When I said scalability, when I said reliability, when I said security, all these things are very much important, because it is not abnormal in the real life that you try to do something from your computer and you find that the other side is busy or the other side server is down. For example, consider the situation when people are mostly traveling by the train. There is something called Tatkal reservation, wherein people just try to log in the morning at that particular point of time to book the tickets. And when so many people concurrently try to log in, the server is receiving connections which is beyond its capacity, and it doesn't respond to many requests. So, scalability is something important. One should really estimate how many requests are to be served by a server in the peak time, and accordingly they should have the server capacity and other things. Second is reliability. In the case of reliability, the server should not just go down because many requests are coming, or the server should be virus free so that the information should not have errors. The server should be fully secure so that it is not hacked when transactions are happening. Many things are associated with the server. So, it is always better that you have a server which is fulfilling all the requirements of being a server, and it really fulfills the requests of the clients as and when needed in real time, securely and in a reliable manner without delay. However, remember that a single insecure client may compromise the security of an application. Client-server systems by very nature are scalable. What does that mean? Assume that you are required to set up a client-server application that allows the students of a college to access information about them. Assume that the college has just started its operations and is having 1000 students. Then it may just require one server to serve about 100 simultaneous clients. Assume that after about 5 years, the college had 50,000 students, an overall increase of 50 times. So the number of servers and the processing power of the server will also increase. However, if application is developed properly, then it is possible to scale up to new environment. On the whole, a client server computing system is very adaptable to the organizational changes, such as enterprises breaking into smaller independent business units or enterprises growing in size. How does the client server share responsibilities in such a scenario? So the most important thing is that client and server, once they are purchased, it doesn't mean that they are final. As the company is expanding, as the business is expanding, requirements change, demands change, due to which we need to upgrade our infrastructure also. Otherwise, there are good chances of losing the business, as clients don't want delays. Clients want accurate information, secure transactions, and immediate response. They will not be bothered about the infrastructure that is employed by the company. Now let us take an example. Now let us consider a client. A client initiates a request. For example, you may initiate a request to access your result from a university, result application. So you may assume that this system is available through a local area network. In fact, for initiating such a request, you may need to pass through an authentication process, such as entering your enrollment number and password. Please also note that for a well-developed system, you might have a graphical user interface, and where you just need to click a button such as show the result. So it is basically the front-end application design. In olden days, we don't have GUI. So then the situation is different. Nowadays, we can have text boxes, we can have a show result button. In the text boxes, you enter the enrollment number. So a validation can occur before you enter your password, and also cookies and other things can be used to go for, if necessary, multi-step authentication in case you are logging in from a machine which you don't normally log in. So all these things are there based on the current technologies. But however, in the case of client, you are entering information, and that is you are ultimately interested in knowing the result. So when you enter your enrollment number, which is user ID and password, and when you click on the show result, you expect the result to be loaded in your browser. So what the server does is, it will process the request made by the client and returns the result. Some common server software include Unix, Linux, and other Windows servers. Obviously, this result will be in a format such that communication process is very fast. For example, on receiving the show result request from your terminal, server will process the request and generates the resultant data. Result data of only your user ID, and sends it in a predefined format to your client. Now let us see what the client does. The returned results are in some predefined format. The client can apply some application logic on the result. In addition, client also includes a presentation component which is responsible for producing the interface for you. The presentation component may cause the result to appear on the client screen, normally in a graphical user interface, which provides a graphics oriented front end of applications. For example, the student result that will be obtained by the client from the server may contain subject wise marks of the student. The application logic can convert these marks to equivalent grades, and the presentation component formats these marks in tables containing course name, marks, and grades. Thus, in a sense, client server computing creates a network of processing steps that are distributed across the client and server. The client server computing also allows distributing processing functions across interconnected application processors. Client server model is a distributed application structure that partitions tasks or workloads between the providers of a resource or service called servers, and service requesters are called clients. Often clients and servers communicate over a computer network on separate hardware, but both client and server may reside in the same system. A server host runs one or more server programs which share their resources with clients. A client does not share any of its resources, but it requests content or service from a server. Clients therefore initiate communication sessions with servers, which avoid incoming requests. Examples of computer applications that use the client server model are email, network printing, and the World Wide Web. In the case of email, we are writing the address in the box and we are typing the message, and then we are clicking on the send button, and the message is going to another inbox of the place on the server where that particular account is having the storage. Now consider the issue of network printing. Sitting before one location, it is always possible to give a print that will come out in another location. This is called network printing. For example, within your office itself, there may be 4 or 5 people sitting and they are having a network, and if any of you wants to give a print, it is not that each and every one of you is having a printer. There will be one printer that is shared by all of you. So once you print, the print can be collected from the printer, and so this is called network printing. And in the case of internet printing, what happens is it is often possible that you give a print command here and the print is done on a machine that is elsewhere. So all these things are very much possible. The client server characteristic describes the relationship of cooperating programs in an application. The server component provides a function or service to one or many clients, which initiate requests for such services. Servers are classified by the services they provide. For example, a web server serves web pages and a file server serves computer files. Here you have a look at the client server network. We have client, we have the server, and quite interesting thing is that in the case of internet, you can have any type of clients. For example, it is possible that you access a website on your mobile. So mobile device is a client. It is possible that you access a website from a laptop. So your laptop is a client. It is possible that you access from your personal computer. So PC is a client. And also it is possible that you access a website from your TV, and so TV is a client. And then you have servers also. The servers are computers with massive storage and with high processing capabilities. Apart from what I mentioned you, n number of entities are possible to be clients on the internet, which we will be looking into in the future sessions. A shared resource may be any of the server computer software and electronic components, from programs and data to processors and storage devices. The sharing of resources of a server constitutes a service. Whether a computer is a client, a server, or both is determined by the nature of the application that requires the service functions. For example, a single computer can run a web server and file server software at the same time to serve different data to clients, making different kinds of requests. Client software can also communicate with server software within the same computer. Communication between servers, such as to synchronize data, is sometimes called inter-server or server-to-server communication. In general, a service is an abstraction of computer resources, and a client does not have to be connected with how the server platforms while fulfilling the requests and delivering the response. The client only has to understand the response based on the well-known application protocol, which means that the content and the formatting of the data for the requested service. Clients and servers exchange messages in a request-response messaging pattern. As I already mentioned, whenever the client requests for the information, that request goes to the server, and now that server may connect to one more server to get the necessary information. It all depends on the nature of the request, because there are different types of servers. For example, you have a web server, then you may have a database server, then you may have an email server. So based on the type of request, sometimes servers communicate among themselves, get the information, and then the backend web server will forward the information to the client. The client sends a request and the server returns a response. This exchange of messages is an example of inter-process communication. To communicate, the computers must have a common language and they must follow rules so that both the client and the server know what to expect. The language and rules of communication are defined in a communications protocol. All client-server protocols operate in the application layer. The application layer protocol defines the basic patterns of the dialogue. To formalize the data exchange even further, the server may implement an application programming interface. It can also be called API. The API is an abstraction layer for accessing a service. By restricting communication to a specific content format, it facilitates parsing. By abstracting access, it facilitates cross-platform data exchange. A server may receive requests from many distinct clients in a short period of time. A computer can only perform a limited number of tasks at any moment and relies on a scheduling system to prioritize incoming requests from clients to accommodate them. To prevent abuse and maximize availability, the server software may limit the availability to clients. Denial of service attacks are designed to exploit a server's obligation to process requests by overloading it with excessive request rates. Encryption should be applied if sensitive information is to be communicated between the client and the server. Now let's look at an example. When a bank customer accesses online banking services with a web browser, which is the client initiates a request to the bank's web server. The customer's login credentials may be stored in a database and the web server accesses the database server as a client. An application server interprets the returned data by applying the bank's business logic and provides the output to the web server. Finally, the web server returns the result of the client web browser for display. In each step of this sequence of client-server message exchanges, a computer processes a request and returns data. This is the request-response messaging pattern. When all the requests are met, the sequence is complete and the web browser presents the data to the customer. This example illustrates a design pattern applicable to the client-server model. An early form of client-server architecture is a remote job entry dating at least to OS 360, which is announced in 1964, where the request was to run a job and the response was the output. While formulating the client-server model in the 1960s and 1970s, computer scientists building ARPANET at the Stanford Research Institute used the terms server host or serving host and the user host or using host, and these appear in the early documents. This usage was continued at the Xerox PARC in the mid-1970s. One context in which researchers used these terms was in the design of a computer network programming language called Decode Encode Language, in short DEL. The purpose of the language was to accept commands from one computer, that is the user host, which would return status reports to the user as it encoded the commands in network packets. Another DEL capable computer, the server host, received the packets, decoded them and returned formatted data to the user host. A DEL program on the user host received the results to present to the user. This is a client-server transaction. Development of DEL was just beginning in the 1969, the year that the United States Department of Defense established ARPANET, which is the predecessor of Internet. Now let us see what is client host or a server host. Client host and server host have subtly different meanings than client and server. A host is any computer connected to a network, whereas the words server and client may refer either to a computer or to a computer program. Server host and user host always refer to the computers. The host is a versatile multifunction computer. Clients and servers are just programs that run on a host. In the client-server model, a server is more likely to be devoted to the task of serving. An early use of the word client occurs in separating data from function in a distributed file system, which is a 1978 paper by the Xerox PARC computer scientists Howard Sturgis, James Mitchell and J. Israel. The authors are careful to define the term for readers and explain that they use it to distinguish between the user and the user's network node, that is the client. By 1992, the word server had entered into general parlance. Now, let us dwell a bit on the centralized computing. The client-server model does not dictate that server hosts must have more resources than client hosts. Rather, it enables any general-purpose computer to extend its capabilities by using the shared resources of other hosts. Centralized computing, however, specifically allocates a large amount of resources to a small number of computers. The more computation is offloaded from client hosts to the central computers, the simpler the client hosts can be. It relies heavily on network resources, that is servers and infrastructure for computation and storage. So, let us do a comparison of client-server architecture with peer-to-peer architecture. In the client-server model, the server is often designed to operate as a centralized system that serves many clients. The computing power, memory and storage requirements of a server must be scaled appropriately to the expected workload. Load balancing and failover systems are often employed to scale the server beyond a single physical machine. Now consider a peer-to-peer network. In a peer-to-peer network, you don't have the concept of a server and client. Every computer is connected to another computer and that is a network, and each fulfills the requests of the other as and when applied. So in a peer-to-peer network, two or more computers pool their resources and communicate in a decentralized system. Both client and server and master slave are regarded as subcategories of distributed peer-to-peer systems. So the basic thing is distributed computing, and client server, master slave, all these configurations are children of this particular distributed computing configuration. I thank you all for attending the today's presentation. What I request you is that you post any questions or doubts on this particular topic to my email ID pvsuresh@igno.ac.in. Also, do a bit of assignments. What I suggest you that what are the latest internet architectures. So just Google or even try to find some from some libraries and other locations about the internet architectures and try to come up with things which are not covered in today's discussion. Thank you very much.